Today I'm going to be showing you how Tyler the Creator uses this chaotic but simple method to create these crazy energetic beats just like on Don't Tap the Glass. And I'll show this method across 3 different beats so you can understand the framework of it. And make sure you stay tuned because I'm also giving away a free MIDI chord progression pack as a thank you for hitting 3,000 subscribers. So let's dive straight into it. Okay, so the method is fairly simple. However, the key word with this is actually chaos. You need to have lots of sounds, lots of layers, lots of automation and effects and processes, but it's all going to be stemming from one idea that's going to be the foundation for the entire beat, and then we build upon that idea. Now that initial melody is going to be really simple, and it's going to be for both the melody and the groove or the rhythm of the track. And once we have that single idea, we just build it up from there. Lots of layers, lots of synths, lots of effects, and above all making sure that there's lots of energy. Okay, so to put this into practice, for the first beat we're working at 97 beats per minute, and this is going to be inspired by the first track off the album, which is also fairly reminiscent of his older stuff, going from Igor to Chromacopia. We want to start off with a drum break to get us going, and we're going to be layering a lot of drum sounds on top of it, but at least with the break you can get started with something that's already quite heavy and distorted. So this is the drum loop I've got from an MF Doom pack. So a simple drum beat, but we're going to chop it up a little bit just to change the pattern slightly. Yeah, so I want a gap, and then we're going to have that come like that. We'll just smooth out these fades. Let's copy that over, and the second time it can variate a little bit. Yeah. So those drums are already really heavy and distorted, but like I said, we want to layer, we want to just add little things to make it more unique and more our own, and also just make them hit even harder. So we can throw in another break on top of this, which can also slightly change the groove. So let's find something from this Tyler the Creator Soundpack. I got this off Reddit. If you search on Reddit drum kits, you'll find it somewhere. So now together. So because the second break has its own groove, like things are slightly offbeat, it sort of clashes with the original break, like not everything hits at the same time, but I like that. It just makes it a bit messier and chaotic. Next for the drums, I want to throw in like some vocal stabs and things like that, which Tyler the Creator just loves throwing them throughout all of his tracks. So we've got this Vox folder in the Tyler kit, which has some really cool stuff. For now, let's add one more like effect sound. Yeah. So I mentioned we want to come up with that single idea, which is going to be for the melody and the groove. So using Analog Lab, or you can use anything really, but I like to use this Rhodes keyboard as a foundation for any melodies I do. Oh, okay. So I wasn't lying when I said simple. You can see that is 3 notes, and then we just go up 1 semitone. And you can see the rhythm that it creates is offset against the drums. Now I mentioned that once you've got that simple melody idea, you want to build upon it. So what I'm going to do is literally copy that to the bass as well. So once the bass does that, it will give a lot of depth and heaviness to everything. I'm going to use an 808 that I've been loving recently, which is a J Cactus high cut 808. So let's just literally copy this layer into the bass. And then we want to really distort the hell out of the 808. I think that's one of my favorite parts of Tyler's production, is how the bass is really like crazy and resonant. To do this, first of all, we're going to use Decapitator, which is a Sound Toys plugin. Really, really good. Sound Toys plugins are often on sale, so definitely keep an eye out when you can, because this is really good for all sort of bass sounds. We'll just use this preset. also automate the drive at different parts. And in fact, let's also put a FabFilter Saturn on, and we'll just use this preset Boss Beat drive. Automatically reminds me of Tyler. And again, we can automate the dry wet on this if it gets too much at certain points. Then the last thing to do with the bass, which is really important, is a sidechain. Because we're using breaks and not individual kicks, I like to use Track Spacer or Soothe 2, and you can see we've sidechained it to the break. Find the right place to cut it. Now we'll play it all together and hopefully it will sound pretty good. Now we want to just keep adding more and more sounds just to keep building upon the foundation. So first thing I like to do with these Tyler beats is like a horn hit. We'll throw in another analog lab and we're just going to find some more like higher pitch sounds, sort of fill out the frequency spectrum as well, making sure not everything is low or in the low mids. Let's throw in another sound, and in fact, instead of using Analog Lab, let's use FabFilter Twin. I love using this at the moment. It's got a lot of really cool synthy sounds, lots of pluck sound as well. And then let's also add like some sort of vocal chant. Something that's like relatively well known is always cool as well.
And you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop.
Now we want to start like processing and affecting things a bit more. So we can use some plugins and some automation just to make it a bit more interesting without having to add too many more sounds. So let's start with the bass. I mentioned that we can automate a few different things. So we'll go to the FabFilter Saturn first, and we've got here the mix, and we'll just literally automate that. So we've clicked on it, we'll press A to open up the automation lanes, and now we can just start drawing some stuff in. So maybe at the end of like every 4 bars or something, it just goes into like a chaotic mode. Pretty cool, but we can also make that hit a bit harder. So let's chuck on the bark of dog. And then just literally turn the device on at different parts. It's a little bit subtle. If you're listening to it in headphones, you can hear it probably. That's all you really need. And we can do the same sort of thing with the other layers. So that is pretty extreme, but if we just make sure that it only happens then at the end of the 8th bar, and now it should sound pretty cool.
And you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop, and you don't stop, and you won't stop.
Okay, so I've recently hit 3,000 subscribers, and to say thank you, I'm going to give you access to this Chord Chronicles MIDI progression kit, which is basically 30 MIDI chord progressions that you can drag and drop into your DAW. And I've got trap, R&B, boom bap. Normally I sell it for $5, but if you just use the promo code 3KSubs, you'll be able to get it for free. Then once you've downloaded it, all you have to do is drag in these MIDI chord progressions, like I said, into your DAW. Some of them are a bit more complex, some of them are simpler, and you can just mess about with them, edit them however you want to, and hopefully it can help you when you're struggling to create some progressions. Anyway, back to the video. Alright, so now for the second beat, let's do something a bit more up-tempo and dance floor friendly, just like the album. I'm thinking more like Sugar on My Tongue, which is a really great track, and it's got some really cool production in there as well. So again, we'll start with the drums, but this time let's build some drums from scratch. For the drum sounds, I'm just going to use this Trap Drum Kit, which is from the Ableton site. You can get this pack for free if you've got Ableton. And because we want it to be really dance friendly, we're going to do the standard 4 on the floor beat. So we just quantize it, and then just to add a little bit of variation, we'll do like a double clap there, and then like a double kick there. We just want to keep building the groove and make it really interesting using all these different sounds. And then for the hi-hat pattern, that's where we'll make it a bit more rhythmic. Now, one thing about Tyler the Creator is that he's a master of both sampling and creating from scratch. And that's really useful because sometimes you want to tap into either of those styles, but sometimes you want to combine them together, and that gives a whole new feel. So these drums are obviously done with an electronic drum trap kit, but if we layer in a break, that can add a whole new human element, just make it come to life a bit and sound a bit more natural and less processed. So let's just EQ some of the frequencies, like the kick. And then just to take out some of that hi-hat, which is a bit too harsh and like crunchy for my taste, we're going to throw on Articulate, which is one of my favorite new plugins, especially on drums. It's really good just to mess with transients. So just tighten them up, and now when we play them together, let's copy this over and we'll just have like a variation on the second time the drums play. Yeah. Pretty cool. And then finally for the drums, let's throw in like a perk sound just to give it a bit more of an interesting factor. Put on a bit of delay. And then we'll also throw on another one just to give it some variation. Now that we've got a really cool groove going, it's really easy to think of like bass lines and melodies and all sorts of fun stuff to go on top because we're moving, we're grooving. So next I want to do like an interesting bass line. For this I'm going to use Vital because there is a sound that I have picked out beforehand that I've been waiting to use for this tutorial. And that's all we're going to do, just those two notes. And then we'll chuck on the side chain just to literally find the kick. So you can hear the ducking effect. And sidechain is one of the most important things in a lot of music, but especially dance music, music that's meant to make you move and groove. Sidechain is literally the most important factor. Next, I just thought of another percussive sound, which we hear in Sugar on My Tongue, which is like the breath sound. Tyler the Creator always uses his own voice for like different effects and percussive sounds. Okay, we've got a really cool groove going. Now we want to just start building up the melodic sounds. Chords will work pretty cool here, I think, just to complement the overall vibe. And we can keep it really simple. We've got that bass line with the 2 notes which we need to follow, and you don't have to add too much else. Let's just record something else in. One thing you may have noticed on both of these tracks so far with the bass lines and the melodies is keeping it simple, 2 or 3 notes, and just going up 1 semitone. So we find a root note, in this case it's a D, and then going up a semitone. It just works so well in so many different genres, but especially when you're trying to do something either darker or like cool, I find that it's just a perfect relationship between notes to always get a cool sound. We'll do one more synth sound just so we've got a good 3 or so. Okay, I think that's all we need for this one. So we've got something a bit more like dance friendly, up tempo, really groovy that you can't help but move to. And yeah, just once again, starting off from like a basic idea and just expanding layer by layer. So now for this last Tyler, the Creator beat, let's do something a bit more of a throwback. Let's do something very jazzy and using the sort of piano chords that he had in some of my favorite songs of his. We'll start off with a drum break again. This time we're going to use the Angelo Imani break. So we've got these heavy distorted drums, something that's the perfect foundation to do some cool chords on top of. And now I just want to play around with some like 7th chords, 9th chords, get some sort of jazzy progression going, something that you can imagine Tyler rapping over, like some of his old school tracks like Colossus, for example. I don't think we need to do too much else. I don't even want to add a bass to this because I think it'd be just a cool sort of evolving track like this where someone could rap over it and tell like a good life story. If you want to see any of my previous Tyler the Creator tutorials where I covered Chromacopia and Igor, then you can check out these videos right here. Otherwise, have a good one. Peace out.